filming this originally on Friday morning, and I figured Friday morning would be a good time to catch up with one of ERA Heaven or Realty's favorites, our property manager. And people, I think, don't realize that we do property management all the time, or when I have a conversation about real estate with like my friends and family, they're like, "Oh, you guys do property management?" Well, here's the guy behind the curtain that is responsible for property management. Matt, introduce yourself. How many properties do we manage? How long you been doing this? Fire away.
So my name is Matt Miller, and we currently manage right below 100 properties. I think it's like 98 or something like that.
Okay.
Actively managed, we're a little bit lower than that because we got some stuff going through renovations, things like that, tenant turns. But yeah, we do full service property management, everything from tenant screening, placing the tenants, advertising, showings, leasing, all that fun stuff.
Cool. And if you want more information about that, future reference, 904rents.com is where you can find our suite of services. Yeah, we can see it over there in the bottom corner. / information about what we do, how much it costs, that sort of thing. But I thought it'd be fun to, on a Friday, have a conversation about homeownership in the United States of America. Is it 65% plus or minus? So it means 35% of the 400 million people in the United States are renting properties from someone else. So what are some of the topics of the day here in October 2019 that are relevant for if you're seeking out a property as a rental, as a tenant? What are some of the things that are top of mind for you and you should be thinking about, be aware of? And even if you're a landlord, like what are some of the things going on in the marketplace? So the first of which I thought we could talk about are scams, current scams. We get I don't know, how many phone calls do we get a week where somebody says, "Hey, I saw this property out at the beach for $1,200. Is that right?" And we're like, "No, it's a $2,400 rental. That's not right. Somebody's scamming you." What are some of the scams that are going on these days, Matt?
Yeah, so I've probably had 15 phone calls over the last couple months of people that have given their social security numbers out, personal information that's actually given to them. But a lot of ones you see that are very common. Craigslist, if you're looking for a property as a tenant, try to avoid that.
Don't do Craigslist, period.
Don't do Craigslist. Like, just get off of it. There's people that will use they'll put a property up, and basically all they're doing is pulling photos from a Zillow or an MLS feed of another property that maybe I've had listed. They're going to grab those photos and they're going to claim that they're in Africa as a missionary. I can't get back. Send me the keys, something like that. Oh, I'm traveling Europe, or I got deployed in the military. They're going to have some.
It's going to be a vacant property.
Yes.
Always. And they're going to pretend to be the owner.
Yep.
And it's going to be this below market rent. And you can immediately move in. All you have to do is wire me the first month's rent and deposit is the way that the scam flows. And I've personally known people that have been trapped in this. And you've talked to multiple people that have sent money to some random stranger pretending to be the owner. And in some cases, I think it's not, I'm traveling. They've met this person. They pretended to be the owner at the property, got them to wire money or send money, show up with money, whatever, and then poof, vanished, right?
So we had one down very close to a rental property that we just picked up down in St. Augustine, where a person it was a self-showing lockbox situation, and a person scheduled showing to go through there, and they impersonated an owner of the company that was supposedly doing it. When they showed back up, those people actually ended up moving into the property. And it's just, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
So how can you guard against that? Like, what are some things, if I'm a tenant and I'm looking for a rental and I need to move quickly, how do I not get caught up in a situation like that? What can I do?
Well, number one, obviously, if it sounds too good to be true, like I just said, it probably is. So if it's the really cheap one, what's wrong with this house? If you're asking yourself questions, there's probably something confusing about that. Another thing is, when you're calling to people and John picks up the phone and it's not, "Hey, this is Matt with ERA or so-and-so." If you're working with a company and you can, if the person's name's attached to it, but if it's called John,
Google their company information and call that phone number that you found, not the one that they gave you.
Exactly. So if is there a sign in the yard? Call the sign in the yard, not the one on the ad, because sometimes that'll be a different one too. So there's all sorts of ways as a tenant to go ahead and do that, but really use common sense. But don't give anybody any money without a signed lease. First off, they're probably going to ask for documents. If they don't ask for pay stubs, a social, a driver's license, probably not legit. Most property managers are going to ask for at least those three things, if not more, maybe W-2s, taxes, etc. So those things they're going to be needed for you to rent a property.
So you kind of got into our next topic there, tenant screening. So what is not legitimate is somebody just saying, hey, give me money and move in. That's probably a scam or just a terrible landlord, and you don't want to be a tenant in their property if it was that simple, because inevitably they're overlooking all sorts of details on you as the potential tenant, and therefore they've probably overlooked all sorts of details on the house being taken care of. But what is proper format for a management company or an owner going through and saying, all right, let me check this tenant out to make sure they qualify and are approved to rent this property? Like, what do we do? What is good property management protocol on tenant screening, I guess we'll call it?
Yep. So the first thing you want to do before, and this is actually new for us as well. So we just started using a product called Tenant Turner, which partners with Buildium, which is a property management software. So a lot of people, when I say Buildium, they probably have no idea that their property management software specifically even existed.
It's not cheap. We pay for it every month. It's not cheap stuff, but it's good stuff. Yeah,
it's definitely there. So one thing that I always used to do manually is I would call back every single person, or maybe not every single one, but I try to do a large majority of them. Call them back, and the three or four main things I was asking were, do you have any evictions? Have you had any felonies? What's your income? Because we're looking at least 3 times the monthly income compared to the rent.
Yep.
So just a quick example of that. If it rents for $1,000, we need to see $3,000 of monthly income minimum. Yep. Okay. Yep. So, and you really, what you're doing is you're getting that stuff. You're not verifying those documents before you go set an appointment with anybody, but you're at the very minimum having a conversation with them and understanding that, hey, this is what I have. This is what my credit is.
Making sure they're in the right ballpark for what they're looking at, given their financial situation. Sure.
Correct. So if it sounds like they're good. Now, the nice part is with Tenant Turner is that does it automatically for you. So there's actually a website that they can go to, or there's a number they can call into, and they can input all that information. And with Tenant Turner, with what they do is they'll actually do a self-showing lockbox. So if a person qualifies, so
step one, you got to qualify from a general perspective, income-wise.
Correct.
And your position in life. Okay. So step 2.
Yep. So if they qualify, at that point, they can either set an appointment with me to do it, because I still do in-person showings if they want to.
Yep.
Some people are a little bit weary about going into a vacant property by themselves.
Yep.
So they can either set an appointment with me, or they can get a code that's good for a one-time use code that they can go ahead and get keys to that lockbox, and they can let them in and go see the house themselves.
And we get a copy of their driver's license, right?
We get a copy of their driver's license, so we know exactly who they live. So in most vacant properties, you don't really have anything in there other than maybe a fridge and a stove. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what anybody's really going to go do.
So they look at it. Let's fast forward. So they look at it. They like it. That's step 2. And we've gotten a fair amount of information already.
Now
what's the final step? How do we finally ensure, before we're taking or asking for money to rent the property, essentially, what else happens?
So credit check. Obviously, we're going to check your FICO score. We're looking for above a 600 on most places, or close to it. We're going to do, obviously, a criminal background check that's going to pull any felonies or misdemeanors or whatever you had. Even traffic tickets, we see all those too.
Yep.
So if you're a speedy driver. I had one the other day, by the way, that had like 6 traffic tickets, and I'm like, dang, slow down.
In a year? It's impressive.
Probably in the last 24 months, for sure. Anyway, the last one, the nice part is our system actually has the ability to scan any eviction filings as well.
Yeah.
So we actually do an eviction check as well on top of that. And then as well, we're obviously going to do employment checks as well. I'll call your employer to make sure, hey, this is what they make. Is this what, how long have they been working for you? Boom, boom, boom.
Right.
And then also the last thing, and probably the most important thing for me, is trying to get a landlord to verify what you've told me. whether it's your previous one or your one before that. I typically ask for 2 landlord checks, and I don't really necessarily want the one that you're currently in. I want the one that you were in before that, because if your current landlord wants to get rid of you, they'll say whatever they want to get rid of you.
Yeah. So a lot, needless to say, a lot goes into making sure that this is going to be a fit for both tenant and landlord. And if you're the tenant and somebody says, hey, move in right away, that's where you need to pump the brakes for a second. So moving on from that, one of the things that we get often as part of our property management business is, what's this property going to rent for? And that could be a relevant question from either a tenant or a landlord. And oftentimes I'll observe you in conversation with owners of real estate, trying to explain that just because their mortgage payment is $2,000 a month doesn't mean that the rent will be $2,000 a month plus or minus. So, and this may to some seem obvious, but maybe to others may be a very relevant question. Like, how do you establish what a property is actually going to rent for?
Correct. So just like sales, we obviously have access to an MLS, so a multiple listing service, where we can pull comparable properties.
Right.
And the market, whether it's sales or rentals, is still being set by how much somebody's willing to pay for this product or service that I'm offering.
That's exactly right.
So regardless of whether it's rentals or sales, it's the same format, it's the same setup. Just because, we talk to people all the time that, hey, they bought their property in 2007. Perfect example.
Okay.
Boom, height of the market right before the crash. They go into it and they're like, hey, well, my mortgage payment's $1,400. And they happen to, or they're on like an adjusted rate mortgage or something weird. It's a high mortgage plus my taxes and my insurance. Hey, my cost on this house is $1,700 a month. Well, Mr. Owner, unfortunately,
it's only going to rent for 14 or 15 or whatever, right?
And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I said, well, your options are pretty simple. You can either rent it and float the $300 a month. And this is a hypothetical situation, but
sure,
you either float the $300 a month for the next X amount of years until that property comes back up in value, because this was after the crash.
Yep.
Or the other option is to sell it at a discount. So I said, unfortunately, I don't control cost and value are two completely unrelated things. So, but again, to your point, it's very hard for people to understand that when they think that they bought at the right time or they got a good deal.
And gosh, it's hard for me to understand that sometimes. One of the, I think the phrase is the endowment effect. And the idea is that we think our stuff is worth more than the market does.
Of course.
I observe that myself all the time, with, any service or product that I already own, and then I need to go sell it. And I have to observe that it's not worth quite what I thought it was. Right. And so I have to take my own medicine in that regard. But that's true. Cost and value are different things. Just because I paid X does not mean that it today, months later, years later, different area, different circumstances is worth Y. These are two different things. So
every human grows fond of their own belongings.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Well, good stuff. Well, we've been rocking and rolling now for 10, 15 minutes. Good times. Anything else that if somebody has a question about a rental property, or maybe they have a property that they're considering renting, how do they get a hold of you? What's the easiest way to contact Matt Miller these days?
My personal cell phone number is 904-574-1958. They can email me as well at mattysells.com. I'm happy to give any kind of free information. If you just have a question on, maybe it's tenant screening, maybe it's how to market my property, maybe it's, hey, I'm a for rent by owner, but I want to make it all legit. What are the steps I need to go through? Feel free to give me a shout, and I'll give you the best advice I can.
We've been doing this for a while. We've got all the bumps and bruises to show for it. So appreciate Matt taking the time this morning. Thank you. I'm Jeff Reber, ERA Heaven or Realty. You can give me a call too, 904-405-1995 or jeff@era.com. Everybody have a great weekend that's watching this live. And if you're catching this later on, we'd love to hear from you on future video topics as well. Cheers.